Okay, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I have a special today with my mate Jack. We're going to be talking about Beastman. So, Jack, welcome.
Thanks for having me, mate. Keen for a chat.
Yeah, it'll be good. So basically, plan today, as I think I sent you in the message, is we're going to go through sort of what made you start thinking about beast herds, and then just sort of go and think about what we think of the book and discuss and see where it all takes us. And then finish off, I think, with some miniature discussions because you've got a lot of non-GW ideas.
Yeah, cool. That's part of that. Part of the reason that's kind of got me so intrigued about Beastman was some of the alternative miniatures options that are out there. So that's good.
Right, yeah. Mine's all basically GW because I've had it for. Well, I mean, I guess the bulk of it I've had for ages, but I'm sort of now adding little bits like printed Cyclops. I printed a couple of Gore-Tax recently, so slowly I'm sort of bringing new models in, but most of it is still GW.
Yeah, and look, a lot of the sort of third-party miniature suppliers for or 3D file suppliers for Beastman mix really well with the old school GW minis. So yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a couple, but in fact, there's one. We'll get to it later. I brought up all those links you told me about, but I've actually got one that I thought about. But anyway, we'll get to that later. So obviously, you only started sort of playing Beast Herds recently. What was sort of the thing that made you start like getting an interest?
Yeah, so I think the key thing that kind of really piqued my interest to start with was listening to, I think it's the Paired Weapons podcast, where they were talking through the Beast Herds list for, I think it was the Scottish Championships in 2021, I believe, where the Beast Herds list actually won it. That was a little bit of a different one in that they were doing the sort of 5,000 point lists, which changes the sort of the cap for monsters, and I think that list had something like big beastie, big monsters in it. But really, kind of what got me intrigued was the build that they had in that list for the Mino Warlord, and it's basically. I think a lot of people know the crazy Mino Warlord build that can be done as you get like strength 6, reroll to hit, reroll to wound. And that just really got me like, oh, I've got to try that. I've got to give it a go and put it on the table. And it was just as brilliant as I thought it would be. It was good fun, and just from trying that, I sort of got a bit more intrigued. And then I guess I'd finished painting up an ogre army and didn't really want to paint a heap of 28 mil infantry sized models, and then got intrigued on what I could run with beast herds while avoiding putting infantry on the board as much as you can. And obviously, you can do that with core with leaning into the chariots build. So that's kind of what took my interest enough to start getting models and trying it out in games and that sort of thing.
Right, so almost more like you saw the potential for some strong single models and some big things, which would sort of be almost an easier painting, building process and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Put big things on the board. Put a few chariots in for core, maybe some dogs, and yeah, just make it a fun build that would paint up pretty quickly and would be a bit of fun to put on the board and a bit of a push forward army.
Yeah, nice. It's funny you talk about the Minotaur Waller and how like strong he can be, just because he's one of those things where it's like you get him in the right positions and it's like he's the best combat lord in the game. But
Yep.
then there are some games where you're like, oh, I've got this big block of Minotaurs and I've got the Minotaur Warlord in them, and your opponent goes, well, yeah, so I'm not going to fight that. um,
Yeah.
and those games are always a little like, yeah, I don't really know what to do here.
Yeah. Oh, great! I get to fight another unit of dogs. I'm
Yeah,
glad I spent 1,500 points on this block of minos
yeah,
and a warlord.
yeah. I spent quite a long time. I think like the first Masters we ever did, well, not ever, but like the first ninth Masters that we did in Australia, I brought a block of 8, maybe even 10 Great Weapon Minotaurs and Minotaur Warlord, and just
Mhm.
backed up with a Druidism Wizard who ran around on his own. Um,
Mhm.
And I did fairly well, like at least by my standards. I think I came fifth at the Masters, but it was sort of funny because I had seen nobody ever run Great Weapon Minotaurs before, and then I just sort of realized, hang on, with Druidism, this unit's almost unbeatable so long as you get a buffer.
Yep.
Playing them more and more, I sort of found that when people had flaming banners and binding scrolls, there was that sort of hard counter where it's like, well, there's always going to be a turn where I don't get a good buff, because it's only regen or stone skin really that matters that much. So they were a little bit more sketchy than I originally hoped for, I guess, and was my first experience with it. But that unit, when there aren't the specific counters of binding scrolls or flaming on the board, it's like that unit munches through anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, basically, Minotaurs can be super fun. I think they're actually one of the funnest things in the book because of the battle focus and rerolls to hit, where you just sort of sit there and go cool, I've got 30 attacks and all of them hit.
Yep.
And because you always pick, if you're taking a big block of Minotaurs, you've sort of picked your lore based on what that is. So it's cool, if you're taking Shamanism, it's well, I mean, I've probably got shields up on them, and then I've got 2 or 3 chances at giving -1 to hit with parry, so you're not doing much damage to my Minotaurs. Or you're going paired weapons, Spectral Blades, Whispers of the Veil or something, and it's they can absolutely mince.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of my favourite things is what Smith F sort of found when he started off with Beast Herds, which was doing the units of 3 Minotaurs with great weapons. So. Oh
yeah, right. So explain this to me, because this always thought, no, that just dies before it swings.
Well, because the thing is, so particularly in Smith F's kind of list, you have a lot of threats on the board, so you don't have sort of your big block of 8 Minotaurs. You've got a lot more sort of support units and stuff, and they've worked quite well for me when I've done that sort of list, where oftentimes you can go all right, well, I'm going to charge with my Minotaurs, but I'm also going to charge with my Gargoyles. The Gargoyles are going to die, but then my Minotaurs get to corner clip you. That sort of thing. And particularly if you go a champion in the front, they're the best character assassins in the game. Because if you do that, a lot of people run their characters on the corner of units, particularly to protect against flank charges.
Yep.
So I did this to Haig at BrizCon, actually, where he had this big Iron Orc block that I couldn't fight and a Warlord that I couldn't fight, and I just sent the Minotaur dart in, and he killed the champion, then I killed his Warlord, and I was alright, well, that cost you 600 points and my unit's 250, so even though they ran from the combat after that, I was it doesn't matter.
Yeah, nice, alright.
But yeah, it is definitely about finding ways to make sure that they don't take as much damage as they should, which is janky charges, or as well, if you've got Druidism, sometimes, you can just sort of send them in and on a small frontage, they're not taking that many attacks back.
Yeah, that's been the issue I've found when I've taken Minotaurs for a few games, is that the Warlord's amazing, but the, I don't know, 5 Minotaur unit that I put him in is just a bust to move him around, and they just kind of tend to die. So I'm sort of leaning at the moment to just basically having Minos for a bit of a scoring option, because obviously my list is using the chariots in core, so it doesn't have a huge number of scoring.
Yeah.
And then just having the Mino run around by himself. He's a fairly small base. You can cheaply give him a 4+4+, and he can just be almost just another monster, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Have you tried many different magic paths in your armies?
No, I've sort of just tried the go-kart shamanism character.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
What do you recommend?
Well, I was just thinking if you're running Minotaurs on their own, Minotaur Warlords on their own, Summer Growth is incredible on them because they're not towering, so you can get 2 or 3 wounds back on them.
Oh, nice. Yep.
Which is the sort of thing where them and Razor Tusk Chariots, Beast Lords on Razor Tusk Chariots in particular, where you're spending 600 points, so you're over 100, you're 120 points per wound, but you've generally got pretty good defenses. So unlike a Gortak where it's It'd be a bit under 100 points, but like super expensive per wound. But a Gortak isn't that hard to wound. The Beast Herd characters can be really hard to wound, so getting wounds back on them is just super valuable, I have found.
I like it. I need to give that a crack.
Yeah, I mean, Shamanism's more interesting lore, in my opinion, than Druidism, but
Yeah.
like the things you can do with Druidism can be quite fun and interesting, so if you're running them on their own, I would suggest giving it a go.
I'd almost be tempted to try Druidism and is it the Seed of the Dark Forest? That seems really powerful. That for that +1 to cast.
Yeah, I actually that was the thing that I did in my original, like with the huge unit of Great Weapon Minotaurs. I was taking Seed and a Druidism caster. My only problem is the fact that it's sort of because Druidism is short ranged. It can be a little bit limiting in terms of where you want to put your wizard, where you can put your units. And I kind of got rid of it just because I didn't like having to deal with that. I didn't really think it was like, because it's obvious. Like if you use it right, it's powerful, but you also need to know when you shouldn't use it. And I just sort of was like, I don't think getting myself muddled up in that way is worth the headache, like worth the extra power of actually getting it off. So I didn't think that in that kind of a list it was all that valuable, to be honest.
Yeah. I usually find that I'm not a good enough player to use the short range of Druidism, so I usually just get frustrated with it.
Yeah, fair enough. Other things. Yeah, I guess how many games have you played with Beasthead so far?
Oh, look, probably only, I don't know, maybe half a dozen on UB, something like that.
Okay, yeah, because you don't have the army.
They were just sort of a pick up and try.
You don't have the army done yet, hey?
Yeah, that's right. I'm in the process of printing a lot of that sort of stuff out at the moment.
Okay.
We've got a bit of a slow grow going with some of the Brisbane guys at the moment. So that they're doing, I think it's something like 1,000 or 1,500 every sort of 2 months or 3 months. So, good way to kind of keep everyone motivated, and they've got a Facebook chat posting up photos of everyone as how they're going. So,
okay, yeah, I was actually looking at that for my my Warriors army that is like beast. I've sort of got already a hybrid Warriors Beastman army in terms of
sweet
models that can be used for both, but more trying to paint and convert up or print up new ones of that. And I was looking at the slow grow, but then I was like, I can't break the list that I want to run at 4,500 points down into into the increments needed for the slow grow. So I didn't really want to do it because it's just going to end up with me building or painting things that I don't want as much. So, but I've been painting Beast Herds for CanCon at the moment anyway, so it's sort of sat back on the shelf.
I mean, Beast Herds are great for doing that sort of Warriors Beast Herds crossover armies, so that you could use them as both. Because they just mix together so well, I think, and they just look kind of, that it's a bit of an old, the old world where Warriors and Beastmen often fight together. So I think it just looks really good if you can and you get double the value out of it as well.
Yeah, well, the thing I sort of found when I was, because I've had this as sort of half a project for a long time, but I kind of found that I liked the visuals of the Beast Herds so I had a lot of Bestigors who I kitted out with the Warrior Knight shoulder pads and sort of some of that stuff, but there's not a lot of crossover in terms of things that can be, if you're making Warriors models, things that can be used in Beast Herds. Because it's all these guys have a lot more armor than anything in Beast Herds have. So it is actually surprisingly distinct, even though I can there's a couple of models obviously that I can switch between with them. Any chariots I can use, obviously. Wizards I can kind of use as well, but most of the infantry and stuff I'm basically making entirely new models for. Well, painting entirely new models. I've got Wrath chosen with great weapons, so we're just going to be Longhorn, Besticle models.
That's perfect.
I've actually, I'm really bad at it, but it's good enough that it's okay. But I've been doing sort of kit bashing with 3D printing. So
Mhm.
where like just in like the basic Microsoft program, I'm sort of like cutting arms off things and like putting different weapon options and stuff on to try and make my units more distinct from each other because my army's basically like all infantry. Um,
Yeah.
so it's sort of like without spending a whole bunch of money on more like Chaos Knights to convert Longhorns and stuff, I'm just sort of doing a good enough kit bash. Like it'd be better if I knew anything about like 3D sculpting or 3D design, but
Yeah.
from the models I've printed, it's like the joins and like joints and stuff where I've messed with it. They're a little bit funky, but it's the sort of thing where I'm like, it's probably not noticeable, and like the things that are noticeable, I'll just like sculpt fur over or something, and
Yeah.
no one will be
Yeah.
able to tell.
So,
Sorry, yeah, you go.
so I was just gonna say, talk us through what generally is your sort of list at the moment. Then, what are you type of thing you're running?
Well, so I had a decent bit of success for me at least. In so I don't know. I feel like you've played in a couple of the like international teams tournaments that the US Discord and like US ETC team were running. Is that right?
Got a couple of the earlier on ones. Yeah, haven't played
Yeah.
for a while.
So I was in one. I think not the last one, but the one prior to that, with a few Kiwi blokes, Hugo and Bogey, who's used to live in New Zealand, so he knew a bunch of those guys in that scene, but he now lives in Serbia. And that was basically two giants, two Gore-Tex, and then three chariots. Sorry, characters on chariots. So Beast Lord and then two Wizard Masters.
Mhm.
And then I had like a unit or two of chaff, and then a block of Wildhorns in core, and then two like smaller ambushing Wildhorn blocks. And it worked really, really well, but the points update has hit it kind of hard because I was like flirting with the cap on characters, and then the rating chariot mount for soothsayers went from 20 points to 40, and Wizard Masters went up like 25 points or something. So I like bumped up 90 points just in characters, and then I think a couple of items also went up. So I'm pretty sure I was up 100 in characters. So even though my monsters went down like 40 points or something, my characters were still illegal, and my list was up. So I had to change a few things, and I basically ended up I have to lose Dark Rain, which I'm not sure how big of an impact it'll have, because I feel like that first turn of shooting when you've got a fast army full of like valuable single models might actually be significant for the end result of the game. Which is actually, it's basically the list that I'm taking to CanCon. So we'll see how it goes. Because I also have found recently with the pandemic and not having events here, I think I'm better on UB now than I am on the tabletop. So,
Yeah.
like, I've been doing really well when I play games on UB, but then every time Scotty comes over, he just, like, kicks my ass on the table. So, I think I've lost some of those skills when I don't have, like, all the arcs and everything all measured out easily for me.
Yep, I get you on that one.
How have your sort of initial games with Beast Herds gone?
Bit of a mixed bag. Had a couple of wins, had a couple of losses. So I was originally running with the core block of ambushing Wildhorns, which I really like, with the +1 strength banner, throwing weapons, all that sort of thing.
Yep.
I had the issue of they just kept fleeing off because I didn't have Banner of Discipline or
Yep.
the casting character in there.
Yeah,
Um,
they'll do that.
so I think that's yeah, right. So I think that's probably my lesson is get that going.
Okay.
And otherwise, just been having a blast with the Mono Warlords, which has sort of got me scratching your head on whether I can fit two Mono Warlords and a Mono Chieftain in there, which is sort of a list idea that haven't tried on the tabletop yet. But it does mean you don't get a caster at that point, so you're probably down to having to run, a BSB with the greater totem, and maybe a totem on a couple of units or something like that.
I can tell you that you can definitely run 2 Minotaur Warlords, a Druidism Master, and 6 monsters.
Get out of town. Really?
I don't think you have much else. Like, you've got your core. I'm pretty sure I wrote this list the other day. Because in the old book, you could run 5 monsters as the most. And I noticed it was interesting that you could run double Minotaur Warlord and a Druidism Master. And surely that's better when you've got 6 monsters.
Druidism took a bit of a whack, though, didn't it?
I mean, people are saying that it got nerfed, but the number 6 spell changed to be worse for Sylvan Elves and marginally better for everybody else. But I don't think it really matters that much. 18 inches rather than 12 inches on Healing Waters is pretty good. And then I reckon if you take Druidism to a 5-game event on the weekend, you will have... You can count on one hand the amount of times that you get off 2 spells in a single phase across 5 games, 6 turns each. So in order for that, like, the Druidism attribute thing to be a nerf, you have to, 1, get off 2 spells in a phase, which when you're trying to cast Oaken Throne, you're probably not getting off. You're effectively probably getting off 3 spells in order to get it off, because most of the time you have to recast Oaken Throne. You need to have you need to have 2 different models within 12 that have taken wounds. So 1, they need to be within 12, and 2, they need to have already taken wounds. And then you get 1 wound back on each. And, like, I don't know. It matters. It honestly does matter for my character chariot army, just because I've got those super valuable wounds that when I get 1 wound back, it's massive. But I think for, like, 98% of Druidism lists, including, like, High-Orn Elf, Master of Canterbury Tower things, I reckon it barely matters. And in terms of, like, external power of your list, I don't think it factors in at all.
Yeah, right. That's cool. All right. I see. I completely agree with you. Like, how many times I like to see the Venn diagram cross over all of those things occurring in a game.
Yeah. I mean, I also think that in my latest experience, because I'm running 2 masters, it occurs more often for me, because I'm like, I've got a lot of spells. I've got +1 to cast on everything, and I've got more dangerous spells than just having a single master. So, like, I can get off some of those, like an Entwining Roots or something that doesn't matter that much, when really what I'm trying to do is just heal a character. And I'm like, it still didn't happen that much. So, yeah, I don't think that it's really that significant, to be honest.
What do you reckon of a Druidism Adept, then? In that build?
Maybe, because if you're trying to go with, like, the reason why I said Druidism as the lore for that style was because of Summer Growth working on the Minotaur Warlords really well. So, I guess it would work, but I think the problem is you're not going to fit in double Warlord, Wizard Adept, and another caster of any kind. So, because you'd save like 150 points by not being a master, and that's not getting you a BSB. It's definitely not getting you a Greater Totem. It might get you an apprentice of something. So I think I'd probably just prefer the +1 to cast and access to Stone Skin.
I think the obvious choice is Wizarding Hat at that point, my friend.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Just roll the dice, let fate decide.
Yeah, true. I mean, I like Wizarding Hat on armies that aren't Beast Herds. Because with Beast Herds, I generally sit there and go like, cool, I might roll 1 damage spell in an army that can't take other damage spells. Or I might roll one of the spells that I've already got on my master, which isn't good. So I love it on ogres, but on Beast Herds I don't know so much.
Yep.
So the list that I wrote, by the way, was 2 Minotaur Warlords. One of them had Destiny's Call, Great Weapon, Blessed Inscriptions, and a Binding Scroll. And And I mainly went with Great Weapon because I was like, we're probably with Destiny's Call and Druidism staying alive long enough to hit, so more valuable than paired weapons because I don't like only having AP3. Whereas he's now an answer to basically everything. The other one, who I have as the general, was Essence of Mithril, Great Weapon, Cleansing Light, Talisman of Shielding, and Crown of Horns.
Nice. Yep.
Then I got a Druidism Master with Dark Rain. So that all fits in your characters, but you're pretty tight on there. You're on 1795, so you're like 5 points away from max. Then I had a core which was 2 units of Ambushing Wildhorns, a unit of Ambushing Mongrels, which is basically just like scoring, and ambush is good for scoring. So you're not going to have a great scoring list, but you've got something there. 2 units of Dogs for Chaff, and then a unit of 10 Mongrel Raiders as the Wizard's Bunker. And then I didn't take 6 monsters because I thought the combo was not that great. I'd rather have 2 Gortax. So I went 2 Gortax and 2 Beast Giants with Uprooted Tree. But you could go 2 Cyclops, 2 Jabberwocks, 2 Giants, and still fit in that limit. But the other thing that I have in this list is I've got 3 Briar Beasts. So you've essentially got 9 toughness 5 or higher single models. And I think it's probably pretty decent. It's probably like a bit rock, paper, scissors, obviously, because it does one thing, and it does one thing very specialized, but I think it would be pretty decent.
I like how aggressive it is.
I think it's the only way to play Beast turns.
Yeah.
You're the worst range damage army in the game, so...
And that's what I'm kind of enjoying about the few games I've played Beast Herds, and part of the reason I got drawn to them is I was enjoying playing aggressive ogres, because, you've only got one way, and that's forward.
Yep.
And so that's kind of what I was looking for Beast Herds as well, so I like that list. I like it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I haven't run it. I've never tried it, but I think it would be something that if that's the idea that you're going for, you'd have to paint some infantry, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That'd be the failing of it. But it's only 50 infantry models. Oh, and then 10. It's 60. It's a bit too much. Okay. I don't recommend it anymore.
Look, I'm sort of eyeing off little blocks of Longhorn herds as well. Ambushing Longhorn herds, like 10 of them for, what is it, with ambushing, like 170 or 180 points, something like that. To me, that's a bargain.
I think they're 160.
Yeah, you're right. Throw a musician or something in there. And to me, that's a bargain for what you get there.
They're really good. The only reason I don't take them more often is I generally take ambushing Wildhorns from my core. And it's sort of like, well, Longhorn or throwing weapons, they're probably about equal, and one of them takes core points, so I sort of just go with that most of the time.
Yeah. Yep.
I actually think that, and this is leading on to the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, which is things that have changed in the update, and if it's changed any of your ideas. But one thing that I think is really good from the update is that small expansion on ambushing unit sizes. So Mongrels going to 40, Wildhorns to 30, and Longhorns to 25, and then I think Centaurs went to 12, but I don't really care about them. And purely because I've been stuck in a situation before when I'm list building where a unit of 30 Mongrels is fine for ambush, I think. Like, bad leadership, but if you've built a list with that in mind, you can probably be fine. But a unit of 30 Mongrels I don't think is doing anything if you don't ambush them. So you've sort of got to specialize in, alright, I'm now going to put a Soothsayer on the side, or I'm going to have leadership going over into my ambush section in some way. Do something like that. But when they're a unit of 40, you can go, cool, I'll give them ambush. I don't have to ambush them, but I'd rather spend 20 points on the option to ambush if I need to than on 3 more Mongrels or something. And the same thing for Longhorns. Less so Wildhorns, I think, because 30s as opposed to 25, not a huge difference. But I feel 20 Longhorns as like a unit in your battle line is a bit too small. But unit of 25 is like, that's probably about the size where they start to become valuable. And then it's still only 25 points to make them ambush. So I think that we're approaching unit sizes that in ambush now where you actually have a good hybrid unit where you can go like, all right, well, I may not always want to ambush this, but I will absolutely spend the like 60 points in my list to give myself the option on these 3 units or something.
Yep.
Was there anything in the update that you particularly thought changed your ideas or anything?
Not a huge amount. I agree. I think those changes to the ambushing unit size is good. I mean, it's for me that's a big part of why people play beast herds, and a big part of the army aesthetic is being able to ambush. It's one of the few armies that can ambush a big unit. You know what I mean? And so you like those big units of bodies coming on the back of the board, and it adds a lot of flavor to the army. I got intrigued to try Longhorn herds. I like the idea of a big unit of Longhorns with a Beast Lord character in there or a Beast Chieftain character. I think that's a pretty scary block with Bodyguard. I mean, like we were talking about before, where you can put buffs on that with put buffs on the Mino unit. That big block of Longhorn herds with a couple of buffs on it is pretty damn scary, re-rolling to hit, and strength 6 with great weapons, or even strength 5 with halberds.
Yeah.
But look, that's probably it. Otherwise,
yeah, I mean, there weren't a whole lot of all that significant changes, I think, in terms of beast herds.
I certainly got a little bit intrigued by Cyclops as well. Those had a pretty good reduction, right? Like 30 points or something, 20
No,
points?
I don't think they went down. I think it was 10 points, but they've been going down for a while. Like, I'm pretty sure I remember a few years ago when they were at 375. And
Yeah, right.
I think they're now 320, so...
yeah, I mean, that seems pretty intriguing. I mean, you're getting a good ranged attack for that. You're still getting, 6 hit points, res 5 up ages. That seems right to me. I think that could be useful.
I wouldn't count their shooting weapon as good, to be honest.
Right.
I think that Cyclops are the most difficult unit to use in the book. I think they're good. But the problem is you need to know every turn. You need to be sort of make the right choice. And in fact, basically from turn 1, you have to have an idea of what you're going to do for the 6 turns of going where do I want the pressure of the Cyclops range shot?
Yeah.
When should I be moving my Cyclops as opposed to standing it still, or when should I be marching it so it can't shoot at all? When should I be standing it still so it doesn't take its penalty? Because they're definitely like a hybrid unit where the rest of the Beast Herd army basically has nothing to threaten the things that the shot on the Cyclops does. So any big sort of flying thing that normally you can't catch and picks all its combats, you've actually got a threat that you can do there, but it's quite an unreliable shot for one, and because of that, your plan can't just be, oh, you've got a Chaos Lord on is it Chimera still? It's not.
Yeah.
Is it? Manticore.
I've certainly seen them on...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Manticore is not the thing anymore. Yeah, so go to Chaos Lord and a Flying Chimera with a 2-up, 4-up or something. Your plan to deal with that model can't be, I'm going to shoot it down. Because there are going to be plenty of games where you go, oh, so one Cyclops on turn 1 can't shoot anymore. The other one missed, and then the third one can't shoot this turn or next. Well, that plan's done now. So you have to have other ideas and other ways to deal with things. But if you use them well, they do have the threat of their shot, and they're pretty good in combat. Particularly when they can stomp, because their 5 attacks with offensive 2 is a bit shit. But when you've got them in a combat that favors them, which isn't that hard to do, but you do need to think about it a little bit, and sometimes it's going to be a bad idea. But yeah, like they can be quite handy in combat. So
Yeah, okay.
if you're going to use them, I'd say like it'll be great, but you need to be ready for like a steep learning curve for those games. Where like, oh, hasn't panned out yet, haven't figured out how to use them.
Yeah, I mean the only thing I can see is the value of is the threat of it. As you say, if you've got a character flying around with a ward save, the threat of a Cyclops is could be enough for someone to put that behind a building and just leave it there for 3 turns or 4 turns or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is kind of worth in its own right. But
I also found they sort of became less useful when I saw that when people were running Scourges with hard targets and Courtesans who have hard target innate. So it's like two of the like an army that theoretically you're going to have a really good target against. You've got models that get around the fact that your Cyclops is bad at shooting.
Yep. Hitting on 6 and 1's are misfires. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, basically right. I had a game against a Dread Elf player like a couple of years ago now. This is when the book was really fresh, where I was running 2 or 3 Cyclops, and on turn 1 he had a wizard on a Pegasus, and on turn 1 I killed it, and like that was the only points I got in the game. Because I was like, cool, I still can't fight your army, but it was nice that the Cyclops started off well.
Yeah. I also feel it's a bit for the list that I'm kind of looking at, where it's as much of the big stuff as you can get and single models, having one or two models that shoots, you're just not getting, because you want to push into combat as quickly as you can.
Yeah,
I'm just not getting value out of it. Like I do it with ogres every so often, where I take a Scratapult or even like a little block of bombardiers, and I just find that like turn 3 they've got nothing to shoot at now because I'm in the combat, so I want to be fighting.
Yeah. Cyclops also are just one of those things that has that pitfall of making you sort of be like, oh, do I want to move him over there, or do I want to shoot? And like that you want him in that different position. You're like, he's better in that different position, but you're like, I don't want to lose my shot, or I don't want to take -1, so I won't move him. And then you miss your shot, and you go like, I should have moved him. But it's hard. It's hard when you're tempted to be like, I want to take this shot, particularly when it's like a potentially really valuable shot where, like, say it's at a Chosen Lord, and you're like, I've already done a wound to him. I could kill him. I could kill him in one shot, and that'll get me like 900 points. But like, you always got to sort of temper that temptation, and I think that was what I struggled with most, where I was sitting there thinking, like, hoping, I guess, that maths wasn't going to happen. And it was just going to be like, nah, like, I'm lucky, I'm going to roll some 5s, and then I'm going to roll some 3s, and you're going to be dead.
Yeah.
So, you have sort of said that you were basically very drawn to the Minotaurs. This is sort of a weird question that I'm just sort of forming in my mind at the moment. But, like, to me, my favourite rule in the Beast Herd book is pack tactics. It doesn't matter that much, but I just think it's like so evocative having Swift Stride to the flank and the rear with your infantry. To the point that when I went to BrizCon, it was 3,000 points, so I was, had no ideas and had to come up with something to do. I basically built a list, half that was just saying, I'm going to try and use pack tactics. I'm going to have units of MSU Longhorns. I'm going to have small units of Wildhorns and stuff as well. And I'm hoping that with sort of an MSU approach across the board, I'm going to be able to get that Swift Stride every now and then. And it kind of worked, but it didn't, like, the list worked fine, but like the pack tactics wasn't as important as I hoped it to be. But I guess what I'm sort of getting at is, like, is there something in the book other than just sort of the obvious of, like, Minotaurs are brutal and I love that really sort of, like, stands out to you as, like, something really cool or interesting or unique?
Yeah, look, probably for me, it's the the other sort of key key rule, which is the primal instinct. That was the
Okay.
one that jumped. That was the one that jumped out to me as being, oh, that's really cool. Just being able to reroll to hit. Again, having played a bunch of ogres and being a similar crappy weapon skill, and having like, I don't know, 20 attacks or something, strength, strength 6, and you're like, I'm gonna butcher, and you're hitting on 4s, and 3 of them hit or something, and you're like, cool,
Yep. Yep.
GG boys, GG.
Yep.
Um, that primal instinct rule was just like, oh man, this is ogres, but re-rolling to hit ogres.
Yep. Yeah. I
Which in
always.
reality, the few games I've tried, it's not quite it's not quite that.
Yeah, not
But
quite
it's
the same.
it's good.
I always call that the 4-up lottery, where like you've got 20 attacks and you're like, cool, I should hit with 10, but it's not that unlikely that I hit with 4. Like, but when you've got like that's one of the weird things about beast herds because it's sort of counterintuitive to me that they're almost like the most reliable army in the game because you've got like if you charge something, you're like, I've got a pretty good idea of how much damage I'm going to do. I'm
Yeah.
probably high strength, and I'm rerolling to hit, so I'm hitting pretty reliably, because even if I fluff 1, it's unlikely you fluff 2 in a row.
hmm
So it's sort of like almost counterintuitive to me, thinking that like, dwarves or elves or something should be... I think it's more sort of like a suitable thematic rule to one of them, whereas to beastherds, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't like Primal Instinct for that reason. Obviously, it's super strong, and if you took it away from the Beast Herd book, it would collapse. like the
Yeah.
book would be non-functional without that rule at this point. But theoretically, in like a legendary army book, I think it would be interesting to see how much sort of more design space you could get if you weren't having basically constant rerolls.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
even
it's an
with
interesting idea.
even with like minotaurs, like I often have games where the minotaurs will do really well, where it's like cool, like you've left me with 18 attacks and I'm strength 5 and I've got spectral blades up, so I'm rerolling to wound. Cool. Well, I've done 17 wounds. Um, didn't even have that many attacks. But
Yep.
I sometimes feel a little bit guilty. Whereas, like, yep, okay, battle focus and rerolls. That's a bit rude, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
I actually, I can't remember a specific like time where it's come up recently, but I've had a lot of good luck with my Gore-Tax recently, where it's like, all right, cool, I've got 8 hits, and then maybe I roll 2 6s to wound in combat and get the D3, and it's like, okay, you didn't really plan for that, did you? That feels bad because you charged me. Yeah, but yeah, like it's sort of I don't know if you spent any time on the Ninth forums, but Primal Instinct is sort of a hot button topic sometimes because some people think like me and they're like, no, like this army could be more interesting, more thematic if we didn't have it. But other people are like, no, you can't take away the best rule. Like,
Hmm.
like Beastmen had it, now Beast Herds had it. Like, we need to have this forever. I love this rule. So yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one because it's hard to nail down what people like about it as well. Where it's like, do you just like it because it's powerful, or is there something that I'm not appreciating here about how it's like thematically beastly? You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. No, arguing that it's thematically beastly might be a bit of a challenge. Why does this unit of sort of just primal instinct warriors fight better than a unit of chaos warriors or a unit of the Empire's best?
Yeah, which is
Um,
exactly the sort of thing.
but
But I mean, for as long as the Beast Herd book is slim, it's not a discussion because you can't take it out of the book.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Even if designs were allowed, like you can't have a design that big. So I reckon we should get onto models now.
yeah, cool.
So I'm gonna let you take the reins on this one. I've got all these links up that you've talked about. So yeah, tell me about models.
Cool. All right. So, like I think I mentioned at the start, that the whole reason, or the hobby side of the beast herds that I was looking for was an army that I could fully 3D print, more as a first sort of foray into 3D printing for me. I just got a new one, and I was like, all right, cool. What's an army where I can punt out an entire army with some cool alternative sculpts. So I started having a bit of a dig around. The first one I think you've probably got up there is Raven Twin Miniatures.
Yep. I have their Wildhorns. I have their Longhorn command group, apparently. And their Razor Tusks.
Oh, look, I love these. I think they look really good. They've also got some good stuff for mongrels. They've got chariots, which a lot of other suppliers don't have. 3D printing suppliers don't have chariot builds, so they've got some good chariot builds. They've got some jabbers, a cyclops, a Gortak, so they've pretty much got you covered for across most of the models you'll need. I've seen these ones 3D printed by another player as well, and they look really good. I think they look really good on the table.
Is that Henry's models?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I haven't seen them because he's only had them since he's been in Melbourne, but I imagine once they're fully painted and like probably kit bashed and whatever Henry does, they'll look fucking amazing.
Yeah, that man can paint when he really when he sticks his head down.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to print off some Carnosaurs for him at the moment, but they're unsupported and
right.
They're too big for my build plate. So
yep.
I've both had to cut part of the model off to print it in two parts, which I've never done before, and I'm trying to support it myself, and I'm trying to hollow it. So I've done supports myself, and that's fine. I just sometimes they fail, but whatever. But the hollowing and the cutting a model in half at the right spot, I've never done before, and it's a little bit challenging getting that right, particularly because I'm too lazy to actually look into the best ways to do these things. I just go, there's a button for hollow, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, try to have a crack.
Yeah, basically. I watched one video that was 7 minutes long, and I was like, I'm not interested enough to keep paying attention. I don't care about this.
Yep, I'm the same. Just have a go, see what pumps out at the end.
Yep. So I've also got the Raw Men of Haken Jaka up that you were talking about.
Cool. So these are the guys that pretty much made me decide that I was going to do the 3D printing of this army, and the probably the guys that made me decide that I was actually going to take this from just something I messed around with on UB to, all right, I need a painting project. This is going to be the next one. So I really like these guys for the Minos. All their sort of arms are interchangeable. So if you want to run a unit of sort of sword and board Minos, then you can swap out some of the arms that don't have shields and just put a different hand in from one of the other ones. So they're pretty good for that.
Okay, nice.
They've only basically got Minos, and within that pack you also get a model that'll look good for a Razor Tusk.
Yep, I think that's one that I'm looking at. There's two armored pig models.
Yeah, yep. So I'll probably print out some of those bad boys as well, and run the occasional Razor Tusk here and there.
Yeah, nice.
I then sort of had this kind of headcanon idea of what if there was sort of tribal humans that worked with the Beastmen, and so had this trading relationships, and we're almost then kind of got this idea of what if these tribal Beastmen, what if these tribal humans were actually subservient to the Beastmen, and that the Beastmen were these sort of smarter characters than they were, and they were just just coming along for the ride. And so I kind of switched over and decided that anything that came out of core for me was going to be basically a tribal-looking human guy.
Okay, and is that the Gloomvale guys?
No, so if you've got the Titan Forge Wakatu
yes.
Tribe Warriors?
Yep.
Cool, so I decided that basically my core was going to come out of those guys. So they've got some infantry dudes that you can use for probably for wild horns, something like that. And then they've got these infantry, or these sort of human dudes that are riding like rhinos, basically. Which I
Yep.
thought, hey, that's a pretty cool looking. That'll make a pretty cool looking chariot. So,
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
and something a little bit different to kind of mix the army up a bit and give it some different looks. I have a little bit of a concern that Beastmen, if you're running all sort of infantry guys, all just kind of look the same. That was always my concern. So I
Yes,
wanted
that's my
something mixed
army.
together.
My army is brown, and it has horns. That's basically it.
And it just becomes, look, those ones with horns are, are wild horns, and those ones without horns are, mongrels.
Yep.
And so I wanted to kind of mix it up a bit. If I'm going to be painting that many dudes, then mixing it up a bit would be kind of a bit of fun as well. So,
So I actually had
um,
this discussion today where I messaged a couple of boys from Queensland, Dan Lockie and Ryan, um, where I had a picture of a wild horn next to my mongrels, and I haven't used my mongrels in a while. And I think in between the last time I used them and the last time, at least at an event, and the last time I used wild horns, which is all the time, I had been unhappy that my army was so like sort of brown and skin and fur. So I put war paint on my wild horns, and now I did that sort of like progressively, and just sort of like now all of my wild horns have war paint, and
nice.
now I've got this unit of 40 mongrels that I'm taking, and none of them have war paint. And I was there going like, oh, I really don't want to do that for all of them before CanCon. But the boys agreed, maybe just to not force me to do it, that it was okay because it makes them look more different to wild horns. So you have a distinction there. So
Yeah,
I'm using that as the excuse for not putting the extra effort in on the mongrels.
I 100% agree. I think that's the way to go.
I have one thing that I only thought about mid-conversation, I think at the start, because the Beastman models I have are from Magori Miniatures. I don't know if you've seen these boys, but...
Migori, how is that spelled?
So, Magori.
Ooh, all right. Ooh, yeah, Goatman Shaman, Warhound Swarm. These look pretty cool.
So, I was subscribed to his Patreon for a little while. And basically,
Ooh.
I am surprised this guy can get away with selling some of these things because they are just a carbon copy of like the GW designs.
Yeah.
But I got a bunch of them, and he's gotten better. I think the ones I have up, I've got like an armored Goatman squad up now at the moment, which is basically Longhorns. But he's sort of got two waves of models, where the first ones that he had, and this was before I had him on Patreon, they were a bit plain and not that good. But over the time that he doing his Patreon, he seemed to improve. So some of his latest sculpts are actually like, to me, basically comparable to GW. Like, I mean, the best of Gauze and Gauze aren't new kits these days, I guess. But at the very least, like the new things that he's putting out are basically as good as them, in my opinion, and for a fraction of the cost. So when I've already got a Beastman army that's all GW, I more tend towards trying to get things that fit in that sort of aesthetic. So he's a good one for me because I can slot these Longhorns in and they look... I mean, they're clearly a bit different, but they are comparable enough that, like, it all fits in the same army style.
I love his. Just looking at it now. There's a Blight Champions models, which are like 35 mil tall. They look sweet, like that. I've always loved that sort of aesthetic of like Beastmen, but also the old site Nurgle type of look.
Yeah,
The Beastmen of a god is always kind of cool looking.
the old metal, like, Pestigores and Corn Gores and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Nice.
that's basically all we had planned, but I want to do one more thing. So, do you have the Beast Herd book up in front of you?
I do.
Okay, I want you to close it.
Okay. Oh no. You're going to expose my ignorance of all things beast herds.
I'm going to ask you 3 questions.
What's a battle?
I don't know. I might get sued if you quote like that, Jack.
That's true. Yeah.
Actually, so I have one video on YouTube that is monetized, but it's not like I'm not able to be monetized because I don't have enough like watch hours, I don't have enough subscribers, and something else. But I have one video that's monetized, and it's because in my thumbnail for it, I used a Simpsons meme and like put my face on there, and like I it didn't tell me anything, it didn't say anything, but I just noticed that it started having ads on it, which doesn't get me any money. But the thing is basically I'm almost certain it's like a copyright thing where, because it's a cartoon, it's easily identified. So like, this is The Simpsons, he's stolen some of their stuff, any views on this and money from the ads are going to like Fox Studios. Which was weird to me.
So if you're watching and you want to help out Young Sword, you have to go to his OnlyFans.
Yeah, we don't cross those paths, Jack.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
We don't want everybody to know about the OnlyFans.
Don't mix business and pleasure.
I haven't thought of any questions, so I'm just going to have to think of this on the fly. Okay. What is the first army rule in the book?
Oh, it's going to be one of the first 2 we talked about, surely. I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess pack tactics because it's the only one that I can remember the actual name of.
No, it's the It's the drunkard rule, unfortunately.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because it's a universal rule, and they come first. And while pack tactics is universal, drunkard comes first in the alphabet.
Of course, yeah, right. I mean, to be honest, it's a rule I've never touched either. Every time I look at it, I get a bit confused and have to sit down and drink a cup of tea. So I've just been like, I'm just going to avoid units that take it.
Yep, fair enough. I want to know. I'm going to let you get one of these wrong. So.
Oh, right. Okay. One of the questions we're already there.
One of these parts of question 2. So there are 4 kinds of totems, and they all have names. I want you to give me the 4 of them, but you can get one of them wrong.
Black wing totem.
Correct.
Gnarled hide totem.
Correct. Bonus point if you can tell me what these all do.
The black wing totem is additional agility and charge range.
Yep, that's correct.
The gnarled hide totem is... Ooh. Is that the distracting one?
Yep, distracting +1 armor.
Ah, excellent.
Alright, you've got 2 more to
go. The extra attack one.
What's it called?
That's an excellent question. I got nothing.
The blooded horn totem.
And... no, I'm not even sure what the last one is.
So the last one is the clouded eye totem.
Which is the distracting?
No, distracting was the gnarled hide. Clouded eye is hard target and magic res.
Right.
But the reason you would be confused is because dwarves have their bound spell, which is distracting and hard target.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay, we got one more question. And
going well so far.
Yeah, you failed 2 of them, so we're gonna need to get someone else. Okay.
You've made it this far through the video, thinking that I'm a great font of knowledge on beast herds. You can hear the window shattering from here, just like, oh no, what a waste of 40 minutes of my life.
Okay, I want you to give me, outside of characters, we're going to ignore characters, all the units that can have ambush or do have ambush.
Can have ambush or do have ambush. So we got wild horns.
Yep.
Longhorns.
Yep.
The dogs. feral hound.
Yep, that's exactly correct. That's why I had to say
Excellent.
can or do, because they automatically come with it.
All right. Yep. There's the other ones in core, the mongrels.
Yep, which one?
Mongrel herd.
Correct. Yep. What about the other guys?
What are the other mongrels called?
Do you reckon mongrel raiders can ambush?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll buy one of those.
Yep, they can. Okay. There is one more model that can ambush, or one more unit that can ambush, I should say.
Oh, it's those useless bastards that I never take. The half horsemen.
Yes.
Centaurs.
Centaurs. Yeah.
There we go.
I was hoping to trip you up on feral hounds or the Briar Beast, because the Briar Beast doesn't have ambush. It has a different rule that is a variant of ambush. But you got that one entirely right. And because that had 5 units in it, it's worth 5 points. So I reckon you got a pass mark of 50%.
Fantastic.
Nah, you know what?
Need.
We'll make question 2, despite the fact that it had 4 parts and a bonus point. We'll make that only worth 2. So you got 5 out of 8.
You're too generous. Thank you.
I've just heard a magnet click off one of my models. I spent so much time gluing those on their bases.
Great.
All right, Jack. That's all I really had in store for you, to be honest.
That was good fun. Thanks, mate.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about, or
no
things you're thinking about?
Okay. The only one I can float here is guys. Vic GT has officially been announced for 2022. It's
bring this
being run on the 30th of April and the 1st of May. We've got a new venue, so we're in the Thornbury Bowls Club this year, which should be good fun. Obviously, it's the Bowls Club, so it's got cheap beers and should be a good weekend. So if you're keen, hit us up on the Ninth Age Australia Facebook group. See the event there. Come along.
So I don't have to spend like $9 a beer anymore?
I think you can get a pint for about $8.50 or $9 at Thornbury Bowls Club. So
a pint is a lot better than like a bottle. So
yes,
like that's still a lot better value, which is both fantastic and dangerous.
Yes, yeah, and they've got good beers, and then it's in the middle of Thornbury, which, if anyone knows Melbourne, is a good bar district. So I think at the end of the night we'll roll out of there and go somewhere else. It should be a hell of a social weekend, I think. So.
Perfect. Sounds fantastic. I'm a solid maybe at this point. So
excellent.
We'll have to see how things pan out on my end. But I hope to go.
Yep, love to have you.
All right. Well, that's all we've got. So thanks for coming on, Jack.
Cool. Thanks, mate. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, absolutely.